Sabah everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I have with me Mr. Juan. If you know him, he's Mr. Gadget Guy, also some audio guy.
Yeah, I'm not pretentious enough to be Mr.
Mr.
I'm just some gadget guy, some audio guy. You know, whatevs.
Mr.
NBD.
Gadget Guy, Mr. Audio Guy, Mr.
You're paying me far too much respect.
You did the same thing for me when I was on your show last time.
I felt that was deserved.
Well, thank you very much. You may or may not know, but Juan is also a host on Pocketnow. He and I have run into each other many times over the years at different events, different places in San Francisco, and just overall, one of the main reasons why I wanted to have him on the show is I wanted to introduce you guys to somebody that is, well, actually, maybe you can help us. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What is your background? What kind of expertise?
Okay, so the story is pretty varied. I'll give you like the TLDR. I come from a family of engineers, electrical engineers, physicists, just high sciences. And so in high school, I was doing a lot of work. I went to high school in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. I did a lot of work with Los Alamos National Labs, Sandia National Labs, was doing supercomputing challenges, was doing programming, taking advanced calculus. I was that nerd. At the same time, every night I was going to theater and play rehearsals. Like I just like both worlds, like at that time were super separate, but I wanted to be a part of both of them. So in college, I bounced around a couple different majors, ended up studying theater, production, and performance. Mm-hmm. And of course, out of college, my first job was working on a JIT contract for Department of Energy, helping them manage processing and payments for massive server clusters. Okay. So, you know, like you do, with the background in theater, is you go and you handle all the stuff. But that's also where I got my first start in mobile tech. So that was during the days of iPAQs with fingerprint sensors.
Oh man, I remember the iPAQ.
And they would drive us up to the labs in Los Alamos so that we could like go hands-on with some of their scientists to show them, here's the TC1000 and the Pen Touch Windows XP computer, and like here's an iPAQ 5450, which was a piece of shit. But can I swear on yours?
Yes.
Well, I'll help you bleep it. Sorry.
We'll bleep it later.
It was a piece of crap, and the 5550 was so much better. And so that all kind of just started helping sort of solidify that background in tech. But at the same time, I had this passion for production. I studied a lot of performance in dance, but I wanted to be a director or a producer. Mm-hmm. My wife also was the best stage manager I ever worked with in college, and so we packed everything up and we moved out to LA, and I got a job selling corporate, PCs at some crap retailer, and eventually we both moved into entertainment. And so she got a job at a talent agency, and I met with the agent that she worked with, and she liked me, so she put in a good word for me at another talent agency, which was hilarious. So my wife and I are working at rival talent agencies. Then we both moved into casting, and we were working at rival casting facilities. And so then out of that, I kind of started, I have a passion for voiceover, directing voiceover, not necessarily being in front of the mic. But I kept getting the same questions over and over and over, like, what mic should I buy? What software should I use? How should I edit? How should I produce? Should I slate? All the same questions over and over and over again. So I started, out of laziness, like I didn't want to have to keep answering those questions, and that's where Some Audio Guy comes from.
Yes.
So that was at the talent agency. We weren't really allowed at the time to have social media. Okay. So I went quiet. I can't really help you right now, but there's this guy online. There's Some Audio Guy. He does these videos. You should go check him out. And it was all laziness. Like, I just didn't want to have to keep having those same conversations with actors over and over and over again. So Some Audio Guy caught the attention of Nokia. They were doing these like influencer events, and they're like, hey, do you want to try out some headphones? Hey, we've got this little Bluetooth speaker. And that caught the attention of a couple other manufacturers. Hey, do you want to try like, this tablet? Or we've got this product that's designed sort of for audiophiles. Do you want to give it a shot? And just kept getting broader and broader and broader. And that's eventually like we had the detour. Like I was putting up tech reviews of smartphones and tablets. Well, that's not appropriate for my recording voiceover production persona.
Exactly.
So Some Gadget Guy was born, and so there was the proper split. I haven't done as much in the voiceover world of late because Pocketnow is keeping me pretty busy, and I'm still trying to get some stuff done on the Gadget Guy channel. But I mean, you'll still see, like I've got mics and stuff.
I have the same one.
My lineage.
I have the H5. And then
we're recording this on an Ollie, a little LS100. So I mean, like, we're well surrounded, and the closet's got like the proper mic locker, which is worth more than my car.
So we're not even using the high end stuff.
No, it's about the right tool for the right job. Some
true.
audio guy was all about, like, you can go and buy a fancy mic and put it in a room like this, and if we did, then you'd be hearing all of the terrible reflections from like this stuff. We don't have foam backing this up, so would we want to hear that? No, absolutely not. So we want something that's going to be more appropriate for us to have this conversation and make it feel like you're sitting right here at the edge of the table with us.
This is really where it is, and as you notice, this is actually a different environment from the last time when we had the Saturday morning with a side of tech. So bringing it in, I wanted to introduce you guys to Juan and wanted to introduce you guys to some of his expertise. But I wanted to ask Juan, because there's one thing that he and I definitely had, is the opportunity to go to Mobile World Congress. So we're going to get into the understanding of how was it for him for the first time and how was it for me. I couldn't go this year, I wasn't able to. But my first time at MWC was crazy, amazing, scary, and exciting at the same time. That's the only way I can describe it.
I mean, that sounds about right for something as big as MWC.
I just didn't know what to expect. And my experience was I went there as myself last year, and we didn't have any backup. It was just basically, I was told, this is where you're going. You have...
Do it.
You have Samsung, you have LG. Huawei wasn't doing anything.
Right.
There was, Huawei didn't have a major event over there. And but maybe just, I would say, how was it for you? I mean, you're back, hopefully not as jet lagged. I don't know.
I mean, the recovery took a lot longer than I thought it would. Anytime I travel internationally. Yeah. So it was epic and it was awesome. And I gotta say, like, it was way easier than like my first time covering CES or IFA. IFA's just a mess. Like, trying to get around Berlin, the venue is just so scattered. So when you get to MWC and you're hyped up, I mean, like, this is like the biggest phone show in the world.
Exactly.
And then you get to the hall and you're like, oh, 1 to 7, and I just walk down a hallway and I'm where I need to be. Okay.
And everything you want is in the same hall. It's down the hallway from each other. All the rooms, the conference rooms, everything.
Those crazy Spaniards figured out, we have this major event and we're building a new venue. And one of the things that's going to be in this venue is this major event. Maybe we could design something logical for people who are participating and going to this event. And you're like, it works so well.
It's from that level of organization, but not only that, if you've ever been or ever even considered going to MWC, the media room, the media support
so
for media.
Beautiful.
The internet in that room is ridiculously fast.
Beyond just being actually functional. I mean, because you've got like that basement closet with like a hamster powering a server for CES. With
like one hub connected to
I was
like, that's how it feels.
It's like a D-Link router from like 2002.
That's exactly how, when I sat at CES, I'm like, oh my God, I have a better chance of putting it on my V20 and uploading it when I walk outside.
I mean, like this last year at CES, anything that we uploaded from the floor that we couldn't get back to our Airbnb to upload, which the internet in our Airbnb was like DSL at best, too. Man. Like, the infrastructure around Vegas is very hit and miss. Like, there are some areas that are just like well wired, and then you go like a mile off the strip and you're like, nope,
you're back into
no corporate or business lines for you. I would say probably about a quarter of our videos were uploaded over LTE.
Yeah,
just because like it was the necessity of, we've got to get something up.
Well, not only that,
I can't get it from the press room here. We're slaughtered.
We truly have workhorses. I mean, that's why we get these devices. But so media event. Obviously, you did cover the other event. You were there ahead of MWC, which is the other big thing that a lot of people don't realize. MWC is a big event, but there's also a lot of things that go above that, and that's where the scared part of it came to me. Because I don't speak Spanish. I speak enough Spanish to get around.
Right.
But I don't speak Catalan, which is not Spanish. That's the first thing you learn right away when you get this to Barcelona, is that they don't speak. I mean, they'll humor you. They'll try to understand what you're saying.
But they're still so like delightfully European spiky about it.
Yeah. And then, but overall, how do you like it? Would you go again? Has it been everything that you expected?
I'd absolutely go again. I'm going on my 8th CES this year. Okay. Second IFA, first MWC. It was so much nicer. Even not being able. Okay, so just the little background. I'm New Mexican.
Okay.
And Hispanic. My name's Juan. I'm named after the King of Spain. But I come from a very integrationist family where delivering like things like, speaking Spanish, we're sort of tamped down on because we're Americans. But we have a very rich family history.
Yes.
So we wear our Hispanicness on our sleeves through activity, through history, through culture, and through research. Not through the language, unfortunately. And in New Mexico, it's very common to speak a very lazy Spanglish. Like, because white people are a minority in New Mexico, and you're surrounded by Native American reservations.
Okay.
So you've got like this 3-piece sort of cultural mishmash happening, which it's a beautiful area for that.
I have to visit. Yeah.
You can't really get away from encountering people who are different than you. And the culture shock of Los Angeles is like, if I want to go to a Latino neighborhood and never see a white person, I can do that. But you can't really get away with doing something like that in New Mexico. But that also means like I really wasn't taught good Spanish.
Okay.
So already I'm at a disadvantage in Spain because, one, I'm speaking an archaic influenced Spanish, which is then morphed into Spanglish. So I'm not even speaking like Latin Spanish, Central American or South American Spanish, nothing like that.
Okay.
And they speak Catalan, which I couldn't get an ear for at all while I was out there.
Trying to figure out. It doesn't sound.
So I'm having these broken conversations with cab drivers.
Yeah.
And at least like, I think the nice thing about most of the cab drivers we had is I just want you out of my cab. So after a point, like they would just like, okay, where do you need to go? I don't really speak English. You don't really speak Spanish. Can you just point on a map? And we'll get you there, and you can get out of my cab, and you'll give me money, and you'll be where you need to be, and this transaction can be over.
They do have some apps. I did notice almost at the end of my stay last year that they do have some apps there that will help you. Unfortunately, they're pointless around the convention or any kind of event. Lesson I learned was
Google Translate. Google Translate. Storing Catalan on my phone got me through 2, not sticky situations, but some cultural barriers there where it's like after a point, like we're both shrugging at each other.
Trying to hit. So I use Google Translate when I go to Germany, when I have to talk to because I do travel on my day job to Germany for events, and we're in the south of Germany, which is pretty much nobody speaks English. I mean, no signs are in English; everything is in German. So I've had to go in, and I learned very quickly that they don't appreciate people from other towns. So Google Translate is definitely a big thing. Having Juan on the show was a 2-pointer. I wanted to talk to him because I'm really a big fan of his work. I'm really a big fan of his style of producing videos, the quality of the audio, and overall just the way he approaches or the way you approach your projects. But one thing that I wanted to basically maybe just get a question with you is, video is a big thing that's going on the market right now. Everybody has a mobile device. I can name a whole bunch. Everything has a camera. And almost everything can do, UHD, 4K. We're talking high end, some specs leaking, potentially, the S8 maybe coming up with like some ridiculous, frames per second there.
Right.
But audio is always forgotten. A lot of people don't realize that the consistent thing in a video is audio.
Totally.
And if your audio is off, you ruin the whole thing. You can have the most beautiful footage, and if people don't listen to it, you might as well.
There's something distracting, or something inconsistent. That's also a big thing too with audio.
Yeah.
It's like for a while there was this trend where people would gate, and that means whenever an audio signal drops below a certain point, it cuts off.
Oh.
It would go to pure silence.
Silence.
Yeah, so that was even more distracting because every piece of audio equipment makes its own noise.
Yes.
And I mean, right now there's room tone, and people can hear what my office sounds like. But as long as that stays consistent, the human ear will tune that out after about a minute. Okay. The psychology on sort of audio. And that's also why you don't want to be too consistent in your speech, is because then it starts to drift into background sound too. And that's why you got all those gimmicky like voiceover tricks, like what I'm doing with my voice right now. People are trying to lean in a little bit, and then I'll open it up a bit. And you're like, that's inflection. Emphasis.
And it keeps it interesting.
And it does. It helps keep things a little bit more present, a little bit more accessible.
Okay.
Especially my gimmicky searching for words thing right there. So that was a nasty trend for a while because people would think like, oh well, I don't want background noise, so let me cut it and then you would have these click points. So every time my voice would show back up, you'd have noise in the background again, and then it would go back to pure silence.
Because it needs enough time to recognize the noise before it
exactly. There's an attack and a delay, you know, between when something like that kicks on, or even hardware. You know, we're talking back in the days of like radio. You would have decks. You know, so I'd have like a piece of hardware just for EQ, a piece of hardware just to power the microphone, a piece of hardware to rein in the levels of the microphone, a compressor or a limiter, and then there would also be a piece of hardware that would gate, that would like cut. Now hardware, you know, you would sit there and dial in like, I don't want it to completely cut, I want it to just reduce. You know, you play with gain levels that way. When you have an education in that, and when you understand the nuance, you can get something really passable out of that. But a lot of people would just go like, oh, turn it off.
Turn it off.
And, you know, like, again, it's that, you know, a lack of experience, but a cool tool means that you probably won't end up with what you think you want. Or you'll end up with what you think you want, and it won't really be what you want. So when it comes to like YouTube and it comes to videos and stuff like that, you're absolutely on point. Where on our table right now, I mean, we've got some of the best 4K video shooters, like that the market can produce right now, but let alone even from like mirrorless cameras and things like that.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Some phenomenal video quality. But when you're trying to play around with different solutions for capturing audio, I'm a big advocate and a big fan of moving off camera. Okay. Which is exactly what we're doing right now.
Yes.
So the camera is about 2 meters away from us, but the mic is a little less than a meter away from us. Because if we have camera perspective audio from such a wide shot, we're going to sound really far away.
Pretty far, and
you're going to pick up a lot more echo from what's going on in the room. In fact, if you wanted to, you could probably really annoy people by cutting back and forth between the audio from the camera right now and then the audio from this mic, and it would drive people crazy. I think you should do that because I think it would be funny. Maybe not the best YouTube content. So
now you guys know what it feels like. This is basically, he led into this. So this is basically what you've been hearing. We've been jumping back and forth with the audio from on camera to the microphone, and just to give you guys a perspective of when you're setting up your subject or when you're sitting down, obviously without lighting and environment, audio is really key. And so I've done it different ways. I've worked with it where I've done it off camera, and I've also done it where it's off camera but ties to the camera. So it basically, I allow my hardware on the camera to blend the audio together, so it saves me time down the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you recommend that, or do you recommend people sticking to, like, let's say, you know, maybe an entry-level hardware that you could use? What would you recommend for somebody?
Well, there are a number of different solutions.
For outside audio, I guess that would be better.
Yeah, there are a number of different solutions, and it all kind of comes down to experience level and budget. Okay. And so I get a little hesitant to say like, well, here's a low budget solution, because I really feel people should look at what they're trying to achieve and then look at how much money they can spend comfortably. You know, I like treating all of this as like it's a small business. If you go to the bank, could you get a small business loan for your YouTube videos? Can you put together a package where you can say, this is how I want to present myself, this is what I'm trying to do, these are the audiences that I'm going after, this is how I want to engage with that audience. And I feel a lot of people kind of get into this, a lot like how they got into voiceover, where it's like, I just want to like make a little money on the side, or I want to be, you know, popular on YouTube, or I want to get some likes and stuff like that. Not to belittle, like, because it's what we do.
No, it's
but you know, when it's so vague, how do you know what it is that you're trying to accomplish? You know, so I'm a big fan. You know, like, go to YouTuber channels that you like and see what works for their style and what doesn't work for your style, and see what you can put together. And then set a budget and see if you can maximize how much stuff can I get for that budget. So when it comes to camera, a lot of people will try and do like a hot shoe mount, like some kind of boom. Yeah. It's marginally better, but you still have camera perspective audio. Yes. So if we had a boom on this camera, we'd still sound far away. Yes. We'd sound better far away, but we'd still pick up
more of the surrounding audio. You're right.
Now, a lot of these cameras will have an input, so that we could plug our audio mic, our little portable recorder directly into the camera. But one of the things that I find about a lot of the cameras that are more affordable is that the inputs are usually pretty noisy.
Yes, and you end up having to compensate by dialing it all the way down. Or at least in the Canons, that's how I've experienced it.
Oh, totally. And even then, it's degrading the audio from your source, the portable recorder. So I tend to keep that separate. It creates a lot of extra work for editing. You have to sync that stuff up. A lot of programs will help you line it up.
I was going to say, synchronization of audio and video usually is pretty if you have a decent editing software, that's how I'll leave it.
If you're cutting an iMovie though, you're kind of proper off the grid at that point. I wanted to swear again, but I didn't. There are all these different pieces and parts and solutions that you can put together. Maybe a good one is to run a line from your audio source into your camera and still record separately, so that you can then like you have a much easier way to like kind of line that stuff up.
Also, you'll have a backup at that point.
And you have a backup. I'm a big fan of redundancy.
Yes.
Redundancy is good. A couple different pieces like that. And then I'm also a big fan of picking the right tool for the right job. Okay. So like in this right now, we're trying to create an atmosphere where we're having a casual conversation and someone is sitting right here at the table with us to join in that conversation. It kind of makes sense that we would actually want to keep a slightly more open audio vibe.
Okay, yeah.
You know, if we had lavs on right now and our voices were like voice of God, hyper focused, totally clean, you would end up with more of sort of an artificial or sterile.
You feel like the environment doesn't
match what you're hearing, and and that can actually be kind of disconcerting. We were talking about That's Poppy.
Yes.
The little YouTube phenomenon That's Poppy, and so what they do for her videos is they record her in a giant soundstage, and then they go back and they redub with her barely speaking into a super loud, hyper-focused studio microphone. So it is disconcerting to see her in an huge open, white psych environment, but hear the voice like it's right between your eyes. And it's very unsettling.
So that goes into setup and the way the director wants to use audio to impact you. It's
create that.
It's it's a feeling. It's an emotional thing. They're taking you on a roller coaster, jumping from that far into closeness and suddenly above you. It's movie magic. That's all. The way I like to call
exactly.
it. It's movie magic. It's giving you that experience, and again reinforces the fact that audio is extremely important.
Now, for your average YouTuber, do you want to create that emotional response in your audience when you're trying to have a conversation about like a movie that you like, or a video game that you've played, or a phone that you've used? Probably not. And so you want to balance those things. I'm a big fan of dynamic mics. I know a lot of people will jump to something like the Yeti.
I think it's a cornerstone, right? The Yeti's been for years, even, but right around after the blue, the snowball.
The snowball was their first foray into a more consumer focus.
Yeah.
This is the Yeti Pro, so you can actually use it still on traditional recording gear.
Yeah. I didn't see the bottom part. Actually, mine is the USB part.
Yeah. So I mean, this has the USB and then the additional XLR connector. So this is a good solution, but I find what a lot of people will do, so like say this were my laptop, and you just kind of set it up, and you use the stand, and your laptop fan kicks on, you type something out on the keyboard, and your mic's right here, and then people can't understand, like, well, why does my audio not sound great? And you're like, you didn't play with it. You just plugged it in, and you put it somewhere convenient, and you didn't try anything else.
Yes.
And so, like, if there was like a big pole, like right here, we would go, oh, well, we shouldn't point our camera right there. There's a big pole. We should move our camera.
Exactly.
Oh, but I'm picking up all my fan noise. I guess there's nothing I can do. Better just leave the mic right here and not try moving it somewhere else where my fan noise is going to be farther away and more difficult to pick up.
If you have an opportunity,
I'm being sarcastic. You
should watch definitely the video that he put out on how to position the mic. Because if you noticed, he did not point the mic to himself.
Yeah. I feel
most everybody that
stop
I've ever
abusing
seen,
the Blue Yeti.
So never do this to your Blue Yeti. The mic, you really need to position. So make sure when you're using hardware, know how the hardware is supposed to work.
There is actually like in the booklet that comes with the Yeti, they have a Yeti. Sitting at a table where they like have a giant red X like through pointing it that way.
Do not do this.
So the Yeti is what we would call a side address microphone. So it does really want to be upright. It actually doesn't even really want to be angled and talking down into it, because that's actually a really unnatural way.
It changes the voice. Yeah, exactly.
So my advice actually for the Yeti is get rid of the stand.
Yes,
that comes with it.
Actually, I have mine mounted into a dome, a little foam dome, just to kind of get that. Close out the audio on it, and you get rid of some of the the echoing that you usually get, especially when you're trying to do voiceovers. So, good microphone, figure out what you want to do. My recommendation, obviously, and you can help me out with this, is if you're going to pick up a microphone, let's say a decent microphone, pick it up from a place where you can actually return it if it doesn't work, because you may not find the right microphone right out of the box.
So that's also kind of tricky too. The rules on that have changed a lot. When I started recommending home recording solutions, there were actually a lot of places that wouldn't take back a mic.
Oh, wow.
For hygiene issues.
Okay.
Because I mean, if you think about it, the human voice when you're speaking is not a very powerful instrument. And so for a lot of people, you're not running these things through high gain preamps. If you get like $100 USB interface, the gain on that's usually pretty good, but you don't want to crank it all the way. So you make up for that with proximity, and so a lot of people will work mics really, really closely.
Especially if they're
you
not
have a
using
lot
a pop
of
filter or anything
vapor. You've got some humidity coming off the front of your face.
This is the personal part of the show.
When
you get personal,
check your hygiene. All right, just brush your teeth and don't smoke around your microphone.
Definitely not. And so be mindful of that, especially if you're going to try something out.
But if you call up like a Sweetwater, a B&H, these are reputable companies that do a lot of business in high-end production equipment.
Exactly.
And you can have a reasonable conversation with one of their reps to say, like, this is what I need to do. I don't know what it is that I need to accomplish this job. I'm looking to buy something. What can we do if this doesn't work? What is your return policy, store credit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other solutions are also things like, too, if you have a good idea of what you want your show to resemble, that hardware discussion gets a lot easier.
Okay.
So if you're really like, I'm an on-the-go vlogger, I need to do most of this from an iPhone, you can get really good lavaliers that will work in a studio, that will work out on the street, that will work anywhere you really need them to be.
Right.
So that's not a good solution if most of what you want to do is interview, because then you have to figure out ways to sync up multiple lavs off of phones and stuff like that. Or you can have
XLR mics, depending if you can actually mic up your subject.
Exactly. So if you're saying to someone at like a B&H, I really want to do an interview style show, then they have more information to recommend good equipment for you. If you say like, well, what's like the best cheap mic? To do what?
Exactly.
like to use for
and
curls
I've
or
had
to like go
those
swimming?
Questions many times. It's like what's a good audio mic to start with, and I've gone through the evolution of learning how to use audio on my cameras, and I've gone through learning also how lav mics or wired mics, the distance of how long your wires on those mics could also cause a lot of problems, because the wires will pick up resonance from other hardware. So electricity flowing through the house will cause certain resonance, and it'll cause distortion on the audio. So maybe a better way, since we talked about using, let's say, separate audio from your video, would you recommend using a phone?
Oh, definitely.
So that's one thing. A lot of our hardware is starting to get better, and we're getting better on the cameras, but not that many phones on the market have really good audio. Like what we were talking about. Would you use either like a Pixel, or would you use definitely not the Nintendo Switch, although you could play. No,
you could.
But
you
like a Mate
could.
9, or we have a lot of devices. This room is actually first time here. By the way, I'm in like device heaven.
Yeah, it's Best Buy sort of vomited all over
pretty
my
much.
office,
Yeah,
so.
you guys.
But like
don't
in a
see
fun
that.
way.
Yeah. So would you use a mobile device?
And I totally have.
Okay.
So if you go to the Pocketnow channel and you check out the LG V10 versus V20 video that we did,
okay.
Spoiler, I purposely went out of my way because I'm so tired of techies talking about these phones when they obviously haven't really put the phone through what the manufacturer claimed it could do.
Yeah.
I have my favorite manufacturers, companies that I'm really hot on right now, companies that I'm not, but I try and keep that perspective where, this might be a phone that's like perfect for me. Maybe it's not something I would recommend for my grandmother, right?
Yeah.
We try and keep that perspective, but we're human. We can't always, land objective. Everyone has like a little bit of bias. But what I find is happening right now in tech is sort of a confirmation bias echo chamber. So a lot of this commentary, if I know this is going to be a really popular phone and I say nice things about it, then my views are going to be commiserate to that. And maybe if I'm not really hot on a device, I just won't review it because it's not going to be a big deal because I won't get a ton of traffic on that video anyway. A lot of the audience now kind of coming to these videos to confirm a purchase they've already made. Okay. It's less about education. You know, like I don't know what phone I want to buy, so I'm going to go to these videos and see what these people think about them. Then I'll make a more informed purchasing decision. It's more, well, I know I'm going to buy the Note 7, so what did they say about the Note 7? You know, like that kind of thing.
They can also learn about some of the features they may have missed.
Yeah,
Some
I mean,
depends
like,
on the level of detail with the review that you're. Yeah,
it does. Like, there's still an opportunity there, but I kind of feel like with the amount of access that I have, because I mean, you know, I play with way more than what your average consumer would ever get their hands on, that it's more my job to be a resource than to say nice things about the thing you already own.
exactly.
So I got into a lot of trouble with the Pixel because it's beautiful software. I'm not really inspired by the hardware, right? You know, so those kinds of differences mean something, and I'm willing to take a hit on software performance if I get better features.
Exactly.
And that kind of led us into the LG coverage that we did, is because LG made a ton of claims. You know, they made a ton of claims about the camera, and they made a ton of claims about the audio.
Yes.
So it wasn't only, oh, we've got these killer microphones. The app that they included, just for, I mean, not even for the camera, just for the audio recording, was phenomenal. Not only did you have gain control, you had a low cut filter, you had a limiter. If those words don't mean anything to you, I apologize, but they're features that are very important for capturing high quality audio. And so in that comparison, and I purposely did it this way because everyone says, like on YouTube, like, oh, if your video is over 3 minutes long, then no one's watching, which isn't true, but you do seem to get better metrics on shorter videos because, I don't know, people can't sit for more than a minute.
And yeah.
So at 4 minutes into that review, spoiler alert, 4 minutes into that comparison, I cut to a wide shot of me recording all of the voiceover for that video on a V20. And that it didn't change any of the experience from what I would normally have used to record in my office. Like no one would have noticed if I hadn't put out that
The
clip.
audio was consistent. It was clean. It was edited correctly. The timing
and it fit right into my workflow.
Exactly.
Yeah, without any issues to how I would normally produce a video, and that became a big deal. So like when the iPad Pro 9.7 came out. Mm-hmm. The big question for me was, you've called this a pro device. That means something.
Yes.
You know, like you can't use a word like pro for a PlayStation. It's a gaming professionals.
Yes.
Don't use game consoles
You're
to do
You're talking
work.
about people that want to produce content. They're going to multitask. They're going to use this to its full resources.
So the iPad Pro is phenomenal if your pro usage or you know, like things like documents, corporate work, things like that. As a media professional, the big question was, could I get my work done on it, which means, can I record a VO? Can I edit the video, import video clips, merge video clips from different sources? Because I'm working with cameras, I'm working with smartphones, I'm working with any number of different devices.
Exactly, yeah. Your formats are going to be crazy.
All over the place.
Yep.
So I need something that can do all of that. And I actually got a lot closer than I thought I could, but I couldn't finish that video on an iPad.
We're talking about the same video, the V10 versus the V20.
Oh, no. This is for the iPad. So the iPad Pro review we did was, you know, iPad Pro 9.7. Can you make an iPad Pro review on an iPad Pro?
Okay.
And the answer to that question was no.
Almost.
Super, super close. And so then when we were getting into some of those Twitter debates about like HEVC H.265, things like that, people saying like, oh, you can't use this video content at all, or you can't use this format, or it doesn't upload natively to YouTube, I did the same thing. So could I finish a vlog with, you know, an intro, with a soundtrack, with graphics popping up on the screen, you know, like a little third for, you know, little inserts and stuff like that on a Mate 9? And it took a long time, but I was able to get a fully produced UHD video cut with the Mate 9, fully soundtracked, fully edited, inserts, graphics, everything.
Produced.
Not a problem.
Wow.
It took longer, but it was done, and it looked like it fit with the rest of the videos that we've put up on Pocketnow. So that, for me, is becoming the biggest aspect in examining a claim. Short story, incredibly long, to answer your question. There's absolutely no reason why you couldn't utilize more mobile hardware into a workflow like that. The biggest challenge, of course, is kind of knowing your kit.
Okay.
I would not rely on a Pixel mic in the same way that I would rely on a V20 mic array. They're just different focuses for hardware. But you throw an HTC 10 into the mix, no reason why you couldn't utilize those microphones for, reasonably high quality audio production.
Well, the HTC 10 had a very good focus on audio. I think that was
totally.
a big selling point for them.
And
sad
other
to see
companies,
that's kind of...
Other companies have gotten better. I mean, Samsung mics are usually pretty competitive. I would say they're upper mid pack. Huawei over the last 2 years has been really impressive. Their headphone jacks are still terrible, but their mics are actually getting a lot better.
Actually, they've done it since last year. Yeah, with the Mate 8, I think. Remember that was one of their number one selling points, the ability to focusing sound.
Yeah,
I saw that earlier in that because. The V10 that did kind of originally start with it. Then you had the Mate 8, and then the V20 came in, and then just blew both of them out of the water, in my opinion. And then
and the V10 wasn't a slouch either. It was good. It wasn't near what LG was able to do for the follow-up.
But it was also not as well known. That was kind of like the Gen 1 of all the different devices, right?
The V10 was definitely like a proto tank.
Yeah, kind of. Like you could see they tried to copy a little bit of the G4, and then they went in and made it bigger and gave that same kind of texture.
Yeah.
I think the G5 was an interesting experiment. That's the best way I can say it. And I say that because I had the opportunity to play with all the modules. I played with their high-end DAC at Mobile World Congress. That's one of the things I enjoyed about going there. But the V20 is great.
Yeah.
Haven't played with the G6, and personally, we both have had an opportunity to play with the G6. LG's doing something nice. Product placement, please.
Hashtag not sponsored by LG.
Yes.
So again, this is another step I think in the right direction.
Yeah.
The G series is definitely more of a focus on consumer.
But we also saw some things being remembered from the V20. We saw some things coming in.
So for the G4 and the G5, it was always a huge disappointment to me that you had the same manual photo modes, but you didn't have the same manual video modes.
Nope.
And that's largely software.
Yep.
I'm sure there are some hardware issues, but with the same chipset, the same camera, or similar cameras, the G5 cameras were different than the V20 cameras. With some of those little differences, though, there really wasn't a reason why you couldn't have brought some of those V10 features to the G4. So with the G6, we've eliminated most of that separation, most of it. But again, the same thing, you can do quite a lot of your V20 style work on a G6, which is really just making me very emboldened on what we might get for a V30.
That's the exciting point.
If we see this continued refinement.
If the G5 is doing so nice, the V30 couldn't come any sooner, and I love.
It's about potential. That potential. This is LG we're talking about, so that potential might never be realized. But there's hope.
Yes,
and that's like sort of the life and death of a tech fan, is whether or not that hope is fulfilled. It actually matures, right?
It's the follow through that I think they really need to work on, and I think that's always been kind of a limitation. Whenever you go with LG, are you going to get those updates? Are you going to get all those additional features that they say that it's not available at launch or within the next month or so? So keeping that in mind, I wanted to kind of give you guys, just exposure, to some gadget guy, some audio guy. But
and I promise I won't expose myself.
Yeah, that's why I said some. I didn't say a lot. I know we're going to get canceled, right? No, we're not. Okay, that's fine.
This isn't live.
Isn't live. We can edit this out later. But what I wanted to give you guys is just a little bit of an understanding of how things are done in a video. The videos, it's not just you pick up a camera and you just shoot. You have to think about what you want to do and what you're trying to relay to your audience. So keep that in mind. I'm going to give you guys obviously links to his channels. Of course, he's on Pocketnow. That's more than likely that's where you probably know him from, and just keep that in mind. Keep an open mind and give us questions in the comments here. Just let me know what you guys think. And I do actually have a couple of questions from Twitter that I wanted to pass by you. So
right on.
We're going to finish it off with those couple of questions. I didn't get as much as I was hoping for, but we did get some.
Rapid fire, let's do this.
Where do you get the podcast? I'll give you guys a link in the description below where you can download the podcast.
I can't help you answer that question.
Sorry. I was going to ask him, but it seemed like that was more for me. But the first question is coming to us from Senor Nono.
I like that name.
Yes.
With my Spanish heritage.
With so many incredible mid-range offerings, do you see that $1,000 smartphone backfiring on, let's say, Apple or Samsung?
Actually, no. So techies matter less and less to the discussion. Yeah. When geek went chic, these all became lifestyle brands.
Yes.
Apple makes a compelling reason why a part of your lifestyle or your fashion or your just personal sense of aesthetic should have Apple logos on it. That is completely separate from most of the discussion that we would field with our audiences, where we care a little bit more about form and function.
Exactly.
And that's not a bad thing. It actually helps with elevating the consumer experience in a way where everyone sort of gets better toys, even if sometimes the things we care about get a little too dumbed down. That's always been one of those sort of frustrating things. Was we cultivated this market, we made it, viable with Blackberries and Windows Mobile and,
oh man, I remember those.
And
yes.
Palm OS and Symbian and things like that. And then it was sort of taken away from us. Now we're not really always allowed to sit at the cool kids table, even though we built the table for the cool kids to sit at. But I'm actually kind of emboldened by the idea of $1,000 iPhone, in that I feel there is a conversation to be had about an ultra premium market. Just as you would have, a high-end gaming PC or a rendering station, like I'm not satisfied by an all-in-one that uses a laptop processor.
Exactly.
I need a market that exists above what general consumers are apt to do. So if this is what Apple needs to do to bring the iPhone into the year 2017, then I'm all for it. Because we know Apple won't do anything unless they can also attach a reasonable profit margin to make sure that they're making money on top of it. And if that means
accessories, I guess.
And accessories and the entire ecosystem. But
Exactly.
if that's what Apple needs to do to actually get iOS people up to that spec, then that's what they need to do.
Maybe even a Pro line.
Well, and you're calling it a Pro.
Well, the reason I say Pro is so let's look at it from the same aesthetics. The same $1,000 iPhone is hardware-wise, structure-wise, it's the same phone. The major reason why it crosses that $1,000 mark is storage price.
Well, that's what we have yet to see. So if we have an iPhone 8, which is sort of the reasonable...
That should be the next actual evolution of
the
iPhone.
But if that's like the reasonable step up from the iPhone 7 or an iPhone 7S or whatever it is that we're calling it.
It has to be something in next year's, but yes.
Then that's where we're going to start the iPhone conversation off at that $600 to $700 price point. If we have that $1,000 iPhone, then what I'm expecting to see is camera improvements, fingerprint scanning under glass,
stereo recording.
That would be a nice feature.
I'm sorry, I had to say that.
Stereo. It's like Google and Apple. We have 2 ears. Most functioning humans.
Drives me crazy today, but yes, keep going.
Like the Pixel can't be the best camera ever if it records mono audio. It can't.
And
fail.
2017 was the
one.
Anyway,
so yes, as one feature. But what I'm saying is like that collection of differences: the curved screen, OLED display, the first one on an iPhone. If we still see higher quality audio accessories, since the iPhone won't be able to pump out headphone audio directly, those kinds of things like. I think will add up to a much different iPhone experience than what we've had in the past with your home button and an HD screen and an LCD, all in a very limited form factor.
It's basically the recipe for most manufacturers lately, at least. But
so I mean, if that's where Apple goes, then that's where Apple goes.
But I will think Samsung can do it.
But I will think that well, they almost pulled it off with the Note.
They almost.
I mean, the Note was. I mean, like that was a $900 phone.
That's the only reason why I even realized that where the relevancy comes in, because Samsung hasn't been going around the 1,000, but the Note did. The Note 7 did.
But I expect that we'll see a 3-tier iPhone strategy. So we'll have like an entry level regular iPhone at that like $650 price point, and then a $1,000 iPhone, which finally gives us something more than bigger screen, more storage.
Exactly.
I think there will be some type of tiered difference, and then we'll have, like kind of like when you go into a showroom. I drive a Nissan, but I go, when I get my car maintenance and go look at the GTR, and then go back and drive home in my Sentra. Like that's you want to have that sense of not only evolution, which is where the iPhone I think has been sort of stale or a little stagnant, is that it's an evolving product, but it's evolving. You want to have that excitement. You want to have that show floor. There's also something aspirational or something big. And I think a $1,000 iPhone can pull that off. I'm a little less bullish on Samsung because Samsung has always been an everything in the kitchen sink kind of company.
Everything,
And so the expectations on a Samsung are radically different. Like what do I get for my $1,000 on a Samsung is a totally different conversation for Samsung fans than it is for Apple fans. An Apple fan, I think, is going to be far more likely to say this is a premium piece that feels more exclusive And that's why I spent $1,000 on it. It's going to be like a nice watch. It's going to be like a beautiful purse. You know, like I think their lifestyle is going to dictate different demands than the Samsung person who like, well, you know, having an S Pen and an iris scanner and a fingerprint scanner and a crazy high resolution screen and a heart rate monitor. Well, that's not enough.
No.
If it were $50 and a half a ham sandwich, then it would be worth it. But because it's only a little bit different than the Note 5 was, then it's not worth it. And you're like, well, worth it is a toxic question in the world of tech for me.
So you have to basically look at it from the perspective of where you want to do, and the fact that having an option to go something a little bit more is always very nice. Makes you appreciate what you have, but also helps you maybe fine tune your selection at least. That leads us into the next question, which we get.
Look at that segue. He's a pro.
From Arrow. Hopefully I'm saying it correctly. But can we talk a little bit about some predictions, being obviously that we are approximately 2 weeks maybe away from the S8 and the S8 or Duo or Plus or whatever they decide to go with it.
I think this is going to be a tricky year for tech. I think kind of tying back into that idea of people coming to our channels to confirm a purchase rather than be educated about a purchase, I think most people have kind of picked their teams. I think there's very little activity for people who want to be impressed by something different and give something different a try. A phone is a mission critical piece of communications equipment for most people now. Especially in first world countries, you kind of can't exist in modern day society without some kind of data service communication.
Exactly.
So because of that, I find people are probably less willing to experiment. I don't want to tinker with a phone if it leaves me out in the cold for even a day or an hour for some people, depending on what your business is. So for a company like LG, if we're looking at the long game, what kind of conversation can they have with consumers to make them aware of their products and then can impress upon them that they might want to consider switching from Apple or Samsung?
Exactly.
So this is right now, it's Apple and Samsung's game to lose. But whenever we see a market that's so heavily divided by two main players, there's an opportunity for disruption.
Exactly.
I don't think we'll see it in 2017, but there's every possibility for another manufacturer to come in and really change how we interact with data and services. I would say by 2020, I would be very surprised if we see the same two-tier Google, Apple, Samsung, Apple, Galaxy, iOS, and also Microsoft, Windows 10 versus Mac OS. I would be very surprised if it's still that. And not only surprised, very disappointed. Because right now we have a number of etiquette, social issues, actually just environmental issues, and interactions with things like texting while driving or using your phone while driving, distracted driving, I should say. All of these things need to be fixed. And right now, consumers and techies seem to be very conservative. They want things to be better, but if you ask them to change their behavior at all, then it's a fail. Oh, you can't. I have to convert an HEVC video so it'll upload to YouTube because Google can't support the licensing. Fail. Huawei failed. Well, no, actually, Google's failing you. Google's not supporting this. It's not Huawei. Huawei's giving you a feature which is actually very beneficial to things like storage and bandwidth.
Exactly.
That's a big benefit. Oh, I have to change my behavior? So what is it? I mean, like, if we're at a cafe and at lunch, how many times have you been opposite someone and they're not even thinking about it and they're breaking the conversation just to look, or they're looking impatient because a smartwatch went off and it's muscle memory at this point.
Yeah.
They're not being rude, but they did something rude, right? There wasn't the intent, but there was the outcome. And then you extrapolate that to distracted driving, and we have a major problem there. So this, as an interaction, is old. It's done. It's tired. I'm ready for us to move to something else. If it's augmented reality, if it's just significantly better audio, I think the app as an ecosystem needs to die.
Everything
horrible,
can be solved with an app.
Painful, fiery death of 1,000 white-hot swords. I don't want to touch square, focus on screen with eyes and ears and hands. I want something that's going to follow me with data and services more organically so that I can still be aware of what's going on around me digitally while being able to exist in
Exactly.
corporeal space more organically all at the same time. A company who can give us that will wreck Android, will destroy iOS.
So speaking of AI, I love the way that you segued into that. I'm going to end this one. We're talking about a little bit about Samsung because I just if we have to talk about 17 and with the devices that are potentially coming, what devices are you kind of excited to look forward? Obviously the S8, S8 Plus, or whatever the S version.
I'm looking forward. Samsung, to a degree, has sort of walked away from me as a personal individual. I mean, we're shooting this on a Samsung camera. Their Samsung camera department is gone. Some things like that, like
The V30, maybe the Note 8 potentially.
So, I think where there's potential. I'm definitely excited for V30 because that will be a third generation of professional line from LG. The biggest problem with LG isn't really the product, it's more the support and the communication. So we need to see an LG that can communicate with consumers, and we haven't seen that yet.
Post-sale. And listen to consumers
pre and post. I mean, like, look at the V20. In Korea, they got these really great mini documentaries about high quality audio. We got Joseph Gordon-Levitt drumming in a subway. That tells you nothing about the phone.
The market, their
slogan was life's better when you play more. This is not a fun phone.
It's not intended to be a game.
This is the most formidable content creation.
And that's what I don't think people realize. The V20 really is. I've always been a Note fan for the longest time on Samsung, and I loved the Note 7. And I really hated having to return that.
I still rock a Note 4 as like a fallback device.
I have my Note 4, which
the Note 4 is baller. It's still one of the best phones ever made,
and it did everything. You can still do everything you want now. The Note 7 was really good, but the one thing that I always felt let down is the audio quality. I always felt like
Samsung's game there is weak.
Yeah, and it's almost like they don't care about it. But they always, at the announcement, that's the first thing.
24-bit audio.
It's amazing audio, and they put all these charts and graphs in it. But
wrong.
No.
I'll go Trump on that. Sad, low energy.
I've been to way too many events where features and super things are like announced at the on screen, but then you go and put your hands on the hardware. Yeah. It's not there, or they don't put it on the show floor. You don't get to see it.
And how many people get so pissed off when I point out that separation? Like Samsung is their best friend or something like that. And Samsung's a multi-billion-dollar organization which exists to derive value for shareholders out of your hard work and money. If they have a crappy headphone jack, you don't need to defend that. They have crappy headphone jacks. They can still be the best, like the Note is still, I think, the best productivity for like documents, photos, stuff like that. Totally. I don't think anything's ever come close.
Nothing come close to it. Not even so. And that.
Oh, and the V20.
The V20 doesn't come close to that level of productivity. But
for content creation, I haven't found anything that rivals the V20.
No, or even the V10 when the V10 was around. That was the other thing. And so, just as far as predictions for hardware. Honestly, it's going to depend. We have a lot of good hardware coming out. We have the S8 that's coming out in the next couple of weeks announcement. We don't obviously when it's going to come out in the US. Anticipated, hopefully, the G6 will be available in the US market early April. Yeah. The V30, the Note 8.
I think the companies with the biggest potential for us to see something disruptive, I'm very curious to see what Huawei follows up with the Mate 10.
I was gonna actually say Honor, but yes.
I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful that what we'll see for the next Honor is what we saw for the Honor 8.
Yes.
So getting P10 hardware, maybe in a slightly less expensive shell,
but a really good
entering a North American at a great price. So if we have that Qualcomm 835 power, the Kirin 960 is basically the go-to. You can wait for a Samsung, or you can go and get a Mate now.
The Kirin, by far, one of the best processors I've seen on. Other than like a Qualcomm chipset, they've performed extremely well, fast.
Well, from all of the benchmarks that we've seen, I mean, again, I'm not relying overly on artificial benchmarks, but for scoring numbers, like running the phone in its highest performance state, it's within 5-10% of a Qualcomm 835 and absolutely trounces everything that I've seen from the 821.
All of our hardware are way above what we need for our software. Let's not get it's the same argument.
That's true, but something like Android, because Android is so fractured, it's so varied, silly things. If I boot my Pixel XL next to my P10, the P10 boots twice as fast.
Yeah.
If I'm multitasking, they both have 4 gigabytes of RAM. Even with Huawei's funky management software, the P10 is smoother in operation. So if you say you care about that kind of interaction, I hate lag, no lag, I never want anything lag. Everything lags. Well, there's a spider on my ceiling.
He's not lagging though. He's in real time.
Yeah, that's creepy. If he comes too close,
we're gonna have to finish this quickly. Before
because he comes over here. I'm scared of spiders. So those types of things. Like if you care about that, right now the top performer is the Kirin 960. We won't get anything until we see the 835 out in anything commiserate until we get the 835 out in the market. Again, that was sort of a sidetrack there. But I think the Mate 10 actually has the potential to be disruptive in that I want to see what the follow-up is. Is it going to be a Kirin 965? Is it going to be like a spec bump? Are they going to do something more radical? Because the P10 feels a little safe, a little conservative. Will the Mate still be the vanguard product where all the new technology goes?
Yep.
And then I think the other company that probably has the most potential right now to do something disruptive is Google. I am not impressed with the Pixel hardware. I think there are way too many compromises. It feels rushed. I mean, it was put together in less than a year, and it shows.
Yeah.
We're seeing issues with speakers. We're seeing issues with microphones. We're seeing issues with headphone jacks.
You have flare issues with the lens.
There are a lot of problems with that phone, and I feel now with a proper cycle, can Google not only give us the best software experience for Android like they should, can we also see something that's gonna get us lit up about the hardware too? Because the Pixel does not do it for me for hardware.
So that's also coming up, which is a lot of people don't realize that the Pixel 2 is a lot of rumors starting to come around on that. So I want to say thank you very much, Juan, for coming on. Well, actually, having me over. That's the other. He's on the show, but I'm
on his channel. He's at my house.
I don't know.
Potato.
Yeah. Thank you. That's the spider. The spider's going to
taking a veer, taking a turn.
Yeah,
that's a big spider.
That actually is a pretty big one. Well, on that note, I want to say thank you very much. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm going to try to see if we can have Juan again shortly in the next podcast or next episode. And just understand that there's so many things that you can do in life. And to produce on YouTube, to share things that you love to do is part of what you want to do, but use the right tools so you can actually convey that message the right way. I learned the hard way that audio was not my friend at the beginning of my experiments, and I say experiment because I'm learning every day. Yeah. I don't think you ever stop learning, and you always adapt and you always move forward.
Every video I do has something new.
It's something that you have to kind of adapt, and then you try to use the tools and know the tools that you're using. It could be a phone. It could be you could use two phones, an old phone, and start off that way. And just try to remember, it's about the content and how you make the mood, or at least how the message is conveyed, so you can make your audience feel what you're trying to make them feel. That's the only thing I can explain. So like and subscribe as usual. Please check out Some Gadget Guy, Some Audio Guy, of course Pocketnow. Not sponsored by Pocketnow. No,
hashtag not sponsored.
Hashtag not sponsored at all, actually. But yes, we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you very much for the support, and I'll talk to you later.
Bam.